Everybody, it's DJ Envy, Angela Yee, Charlamagne the Guy. We are the Breakfast Club. We have a special guest on the line right now and in the building. Andrew
in the virtual building.
Welcome.
Hello, Breakfast Club. Hello, New York City.
And you know what?
Let's go.
Usually it's bromance when you come up here because it's just usually you, me, and Charlamagne. But today, Yee decided to join us this time.
Thank goodness. I was so tired of just hanging out with you and Charlamagne, DJ Envy. We all know Angela elevates us all.
Well, thank you. Andrew Yang, who, by the way, is running for mayor of New York City.
Is that official? Is that official, Andrew Yang?
It's official.
Hey.
I am running for mayor of the greatest city in the world. Let's go, New York City.
Sorry you stepped on your announcement.
No, it's all to the good. It's about. I've been raring to go for a little while, but like to launch one of these campaigns, you have to dot some I's and cross some T's. But it's go time, New York. It pains me where we are right now. I mean, we all feel it. We all see it. Just the fact that we're having this conversation remotely. I mean, I miss hanging out in the studio with you all.
Yes, and yesterday was your birthday, so happy birthday.
Thank you. 46 years young.
Okay.
Prime of my life.
So 46 is your birthday, and you want to put on all the stress. So why do you want to run for mayor of New York City?
It's because my city is hurting, and I believe I can help. I mean, this is a deep, dark hole we're in. If you look at the numbers, a couple 100,000 people have left. We've lost 25,000 lives. Unemployment's over 10%, which is almost twice the national average. We're missing 60 million tourists who used to support over 300,000 jobs. I mean, this city is in deep distress, and we need to step up. And I believe I can help get us on a path to real recovery that not just is trying to return us to the New York of pre-COVID, but also can solve some of the problems that we've been struggling with for years and decades. Because even pre-COVID, there were a lot of New Yorkers who were not included in any of the economic success or growth.
The New York Times asked a good question. I read the article. Can Andrew Yang make it in New York City politics? Because you referred to New York as my New York, and you did live here for 24 years, but a lot of people don't look at you and say, oh, he's a New Yorker. A lot of people say they didn't see you in the New York circles, political circles, things of that nature. So can you make it in New York politics, Yang Gang?
You know, I am so pumped to get to work for my city, and it's really funny because I ran for president and I was kind of an anonymous figure. Like, no one knew where the heck I was from. No one had heard of Andrew Yang. Meanwhile, I've been here in New York since 1996. And so it is true that there are a lot of folks who are, in city government who are like, oh, wow, Andrew Yang's been here the whole time. But I am itching to get to work for my city and introduce myself or reintroduce myself, because a lot of folks know me from the presidential when I fought for universal basic income, or maybe from CNN, or maybe from hanging out with you guys, and maybe when they thought I came and saw you guys, I was in from out of town when really it was just me taking the subway. But it's going to be a lot of fun. The fact is, we have a son in public school here. I got married at City Hall. I was here during 9/11. Our first son was born during Hurricane Sandy. And the hospital was taking patients from other hospitals that had lost power. I've been here in New York for a long time. And again, it breaks my heart to see our city like this. We have to get it back up on its feet.
Andrew, I saw that you got some people talking, some backlash for some comments that you made about leaving New York City during this pandemic and how hard it is to be working in a 2-bedroom apartment and have your kids there. So what do you have to say in response to that? Because people were saying, well, Andrew Yang, during this pandemic, he hasn't been in New York City.
Are you left New York during the pandemic?
Well, yeah, I was in Georgia for a good chunk of it, helping Reverend Warnock and John Ossoff flip the Senate. I was down to Georgia for weeks, knocking on doors, raising money, doing what I could. And the fact that those elections went our way is something I'm incredibly proud of. Before that, I was campaigning for Joe and Kamala. And I had a policy where anything they asked me to do, I did. So I went to Pennsylvania, campaigned for them. I was raising money any way I could. A lot of that was online because it was COVID. So I've been doing a number of things over the last number of months. But now that I'm in the field, the people in New York are going to see me every day. And if you want to hear from Andrew Yang, you want to talk to me, I want to hear from you, I want to talk to you.
I really did not understand why those comments upset people so much, because the way I read it was you were like, imagine living in an apartment, you know what I mean, with 2 kids while they're in school, while you're trying to work. That was a lot of people's reality. So I thought you was just trying to bring people into what people were experiencing.
Well, thanks for reading it that way. That's certainly the way I intended it. And the fact is, I think all the time about families' circumstances. It's why I'm running for mayor. It's why I ran for president. The fact is, there are so many people suffering in really difficult situations that could be better. And if you look at it right now, if you're a parent like I am, our schools have not been open for months, and it's been really difficult for a lot of folks in very personal ways, trying to figure out how to educate your kids online, but also how are you going to get to work? You know, it's like there are a lot of families scrambling for childcare. Closing schools has really, really tough consequences, particularly for families whose kids were on the verge of falling behind in the first place. I mean, you stamp out a year of their education, like it's going to be very, very difficult to get that back.
Now, what will you do better than the current mayor? And what do you see the things that the current mayor is doing that you were saying, this is wrong and we need to change these type of things?
Well, the current mayor is in a tough situation, but we're going to need bold new leadership to try to get the city on the right track. And we have to be realistic. Where you look up right now, officially, there is a vaccine in the world. There are some people getting vaccinated, but the city still is in a really, really tough spot because you don't know when tourists are going to feel like they can come back, offices are going to reopen. I mean, tens of thousands of small businesses from the Bronx to Brooklyn to Queens. I mean, I talked to them, and I talked to a restaurant owner who's been in business for 35 years, and they've been hanging on through this entire pandemic, and they're about to call it quits, you know, and then if they close, then what happens to that storefront? What happens to that family? What happens to that business?
Can you explain one thing to me?
Of course.
The restaurant, when you name the restaurant, and maybe you can help me understand. They don't allow indoor eating, right? But they allow you to eat outdoor, inside a tent. Like,
my wife and I have the same conversation because a lot of the stuff outdoors, it's fully enclosed. And so if you're talking about like an air chamber, you know, it'd be one thing if it was outdoors and ventilated.
Correct.
But the fact is, it's January and it's cold. So a lot of the time there is no ventilation. You have a warmer. And so you're really dubious as to whether there's been an improvement to the actual air circulation risk. And the fact is, if a restaurant took appropriate precautions in terms of spacing out the booths and, you know, like having it so every other booth is unoccupied, it's probably an equivalent situation to a lot of the makeshift outdoor stuff that is being allowed right now. So that's something that we can see around us. And it's frustrating for a lot of restaurant owners I've talked to. They've spent, this is the heartbreaking part about what's going on in New York right now. These restaurant owners are working harder for less. You know, like I talked to a hairdresser in Brooklyn, harder for less. Like everyone's working harder for less, like trying to squeeze more business out of depleted customer base. And the city's regulations have made it really, really tough. December was the final straw for a lot of restaurants, DJ, because they were hanging on. And December is traditionally a time when they make a lot of money. Like this time, they were just hoping to make a little money. But then we had to shut down because of COVID. And, you know, obviously COVID is a major real life threat, and we all need to take it seriously. But there are a lot of restaurant owners who are like, look, I'm not sure if this set of measures made sense based upon public health needs.
Now, Yang, let me ask you a question. I read this, you know, I think this was a couple of days ago. It was actually in the New York Post, and the headline is, Andrew Yang's anti-circumcision stance cuts deep, so says Jewish leaders. Do you fear that your views on circumcision will hurt your popularity among the Jewish community here in New York?
You know, I don't at all. I've attended my friends' brisses for their children myself and felt privileged to do so. And there have been a number of Jewish community groups have already reached out to my campaign before I even announced, saying that they want to talk to me because I was clear as day that, look, I don't think it's the government's role at all to interfere with parents' personal decisions as to what they want to do with their kids. And so if you want to circumcise your child, be our guest. And the point I was making was that we should not be mandating or requiring circumcision as something that everyone should do. It should be up to the parent in every case.
Well, you know, when you're running for office, people will definitely take everything and say, okay, he said this, now we can't support him, or are you going for that? And there are a lot of people who are running for mayor right now in New York City, some really great candidates as well. So I want to know, do you have relationships with like a Maya Wiley or Eric Adams, Scott Stringer, all of these people who also have their hat in the ring?
You know, I've had a call and Zoomed with at least one of them. And the fact is, I appreciate anyone who's trying to step up for New York City. You know, anyone who's running for mayor for the right reasons. You know, we're going to have a very fun and competitive race. Probably not fun. I mean, it is New York, but a very competitive race. And whoever the mayor is, we have to get behind that person because we've got a lot of work to do. We're in a crisis. There's no guarantee that New York comes back the way we want it to.
What were your thoughts on what happened on Capitol Hill and Donald Trump? What were your thoughts, and what do you think should happen?
He needs to be impeached in the worst way. I mean, what I said was, look, if a guy sends a mob to your house and it kills people, that has to be over whatever line you draw. So I hope that the Senate impeaches him as well as the House. I think the House will certainly vote to impeach him. And for people who say, look, who cares? He's going to be out of office in a week anyway. There are really serious consequences to being successfully impeached. For example, he doesn't get Secret Service forever. He doesn't get, presidential pension. He can't run for office again. Like, there are a lot of real pluses to impeaching him. But it was a nightmare what happened in the Capitol. I mean, we all saw it, and it was very, very dark. It's like a dystopian movie or vision come to life. And I'm sure if you were Black and watching that, you were like, how the heck are these guys doing this without getting shot? It's I mean, the thing that came to mind for me was like, wow, this would be, 10 times more violent and bloody if this group were anything other than Trumpers and essentially far right folks who were protesting. If it had been people of color, it would have been a terrible, terrible conflict and tragedy, as we've seen.
What should happen to the police that were there taking selfies and moving barricades out of the way and letting people in?
I mean, any of those guys need to go immediately. And when I say go, I mean, like, I'm not even sure firing is like where you'd stop. A bunch of those guys have lost their jobs already, which is the bare minimum. And, shout out to Eugene Goodman, the Black cop, who was a freaking hero. Did you all see that video?
We did. Yeah, absolutely.
What a freaking, stellar. And I was saying his name is Eugene Goodman. I was like, whoever named him, got it right. That's a good man. He freaking saved lives. He might have kept that mob from getting into the Senate before the Senate had closed its doors. And he knew exactly what he was doing. He was trying to draw the mob upstairs and to his own, obviously, massive personal risk. What a hero. I hope he gets Presidential Medal of Freedom and all the recognition he deserves.
He should have shot somebody. I want to ask you a question. If that was, say, Al Qaeda instead of Al Cracker, as I call him, how fast would that country have been bombed?
Oh, I was saying, Charlemagne, it's like if it had been any other group, conservatives would be calling for martial law right now or armed retaliation right now. But because it was their people, they're still trying to figure out what their response is going to be. But I'm optimistic that Republicans are going to impeach him and turn on Trump because this shit's gone on for way too long. No, genuinely.
Really?
In part, and they just lost Georgia in part because of Trump. I think if there's going to be a time where Republicans show some backbone and principle, now is going to be the time. I know we've been waiting for that for years and it hasn't happened. I know. Mm-hmm. But I think at least some of them are going to make that calculation and make the move. Literally, you were barricading the room when people were freaking storming in. I mean, if that doesn't clarify your thinking, nothing will.
I want some Democrats to show some backbone too and start talking about, pressing charges on Donald Trump, actually getting him locked up on top of the impeachment and everything else.
I think that stuff's going to be real for a while. And one of the reasons why impeachment is very, very helpful is that he can't pardon anyone. That pardoning power, holy crap. I told you all, if I became president, I was going to pardon everyone who was in jail for a nonviolent drug-related offense because I was like that they shouldn't be in jail. Pardon a bunch of folks who shouldn't be in jail. And instead, Trump has followed the playbook of, pardoning a bunch of corrupt people that helped him.
Can we talk about New York City in particular, since you're running for mayor here?
Please.
What are some things that you plan to do in order to get people to come back to New York? We've heard people saying New York is dead. Like you said, all these businesses have to shut down. How do you get people to come back to New York? And how long do you think it'll take for us to thrive again?
We have to make New York City the fastest post-COVID comeback city in the country, in the world. And the question is, how do you do that? And I think New York City can actually be a catalyst for people adopting a vaccine. And I know the Black community in particular has struggled with vaccination and healthcare institutions, on multiple levels. And like we all know, for example, that the rate of maternal mortality is 7 times higher for Black women than it is for white women, in part because of the failures of healthcare institutions. So there's like a massive bridge of trust that needs to somehow get reconstituted. But part of it is that this vaccine is the necessary step to getting New York City back to where we want it to be, Angela. And it's not going to happen by itself. Like, one of the things I keep projecting forward for myself is, let's say we get to 30, 40, 50% vaccination. Does that mean that Broadway reopens and you can go to a Knicks game and the restaurants and bars reopen? It's totally unclear. So one of the things that we're going to have to do is we're going to have to make it so that New York City becomes the place to be as we recover from COVID. And the way we can do that is going to be that you have an app on your phone. You can think of it as like a New York City app or a passport. And the only piece of information on this app is that you've been vaccinated. And then you can go wherever you want and just be like, I've been vaccinated. And then you can go to that restaurant. It can be open full force. Like, you can go to concerts, you can go to shows, you can go to movie theaters. Like, that's the kind of thing that New York City has to lead on, because there are a lot of folks that right now are on the fence about when they're going to get vaccinated. We actually have to give them a reason to get vaccinated, and that will speed up our recovery in a really big way. And that, to me, is the only path back, because you're missing right now, again, at this point, you're missing millions of people that should be on our streets right now.
What about the homeless problem? There's a lot of homeless, and me and Charlamagne talk about it all the time. My daughter goes to NYU, and she's scared to go out of her dorm because she said it's to the point right now, you can just tell it's ridiculous, and people are screaming, they're yelling at the students as they come down, and she was like, it's worse. So what do we do about that problem to make sure people can get, because a lot of people lost their houses, they can't get their medicine if they need medicine, if they have mental problems, they're not getting their right medicine. How do we stop that and make sure that these people can get their apartments back and get into shelters and get their medicine and get the help that they need?
The absolute last thing we need right now is to add to the homelessness crisis. So if you look at the way the city operates, if you're homeless and you wind up in the shelter system, we're spending tens of thousands of dollars a year per person. And the very simple argument to make to folks is like, look, we should be spending less than that money keeping people in their homes. We should be making sure that landlords are not evicting people who haven't been able to pay their rent during COVID because they've lost their jobs. Like, it's already a crisis, homelessness. And it has the potential to get worse if we don't get in there and say, look, landlords, you're going to have to work with tenants, and the city will work with you on this. And we have to keep people in their homes. The next thing we have to do is we have to do something that New York City has struggled with for generations, which is develop affordable housing. And the problem when you look at affordable housing or supportive housing, people will say they're for it, but then when you show up in their neighborhood, they're not for it. That's just like life here in New York City. But the opportunity we have right now is tied to the fact that we have massive capacity in underutilized hotels and massive capacity in underutilized commercial spaces, like commercial real estate, office buildings. Like, the fact is that some of these office buildings will not return as office buildings if we do this right. And there are some commercial landlords who don't want to hear this because they're still holding out hope that the market will snap back and they'll be able to rent their offices at the same rates that they were able to pre-COVID. It's not happening for years. And so we have to have some of these landlords look up and say, look, the best thing you can do actually is to let the city repurpose this into affordable housing and supportive housing in different environments. And it's already happening because some of these underutilized hotels are being used as shelters right now. I mean, if you think about it again, we're missing 60 million tourists, and you still have all of these hotels that are standing empty.
Listen, Yang, how could universal basic income work in New York?
I'm so glad you asked, Charlamagne. We are going to be rolling out the biggest guaranteed minimum income program in the history of the United States right here in New York City. And New York City is home to a lot of people. There are a lot of people who are in what's called extreme poverty in New York City, about 500,000. And what we're going to say is, look, we need to lift people out of extreme poverty, and the city will save money on this because of what I just described, where if you fall into homelessness, into the shelter system, into our criminal justice system, you wind up costing the city tens of thousands of dollars a year easily. And so if we put a bit of money into your hands so that you're able to stay in your home, stay in a situation that's positive for you, that's actually good for us. So we're going to commit $1 billion a year to the poorest 500,000 New York City residents to lift everyone out of extreme poverty. And you all know, my organization gave $1 million to people in the Bronx. I'm back with the B. I'm back with the billion. Like, that million was a drop in the bucket, and I knew it at the time. Like, I was proud because, giving people $1 million is a good feeling. You know what's going to be an even better feeling? Giving $1 billion a year, and we can do it. Even in our current crisis state, New York City's budget, it's like $89 billion. Like, this will pay for itself, and we're going to demonstrate to the country and to the world that investing in people is the right way to invest.
So let me be clear on this. It's not going to be $1,000 to every New Yorker, but it'll be $1 billion to you said the poorest New Yorkers.
The poorest 500,000 New Yorkers. That's right.
Okay. And so it would be $1,000 a month, or how would y'all do that?
Well, what we do is we go in and we're going to work with a New York City ID, which you can get a New York City ID essentially regardless of your circumstances. And we're going to tie it to some of the existing city programs that are in place to help people, with food stamps and other benefits. And we're going to look at their situation and say, look, if you're below a certain level, we're going to cash you up. And so we've looked at the numbers and said there are about 500,000 New Yorkers who are in extreme poverty that we can cash up out of extreme poverty. And if we do that, then that money, where's that money going to go? It's going to go right to keeping them in their home, to food, to daycare, to local bodegas, to some of the restaurants and businesses we want to reopen. So this is an investment in New York City itself. I'm going to be running an anti-poverty platform. So we're not even going to stop with the billion. The next thing we're going to do is we're going to try and get some of the 29% of New Yorkers who don't have high-speed internet at home, internet. Like, imagine if you didn't have high-speed internet during this time. You're looking up, and that's the reality for hundreds of thousands of New Yorkers. And the reason, we all know why it is that Verizon and Comcast and the gang didn't think they could make money. They looked up, but the thing that people will be happy to hear is that 99% of New York City is actually wired for internet. So all we have to do is actually connect the individual buildings and homes, but the infrastructure is in place. And so my administration is going to put $100 million a year into getting people high-speed internet at a rate that's accessible and affordable to anyone here in New York.
What about the NYPD? NYPD had a $6 billion budget, and that's where a lot of the conversation about defunding the police came. What are you going to do to hold police officers accountable?
Now, I was really inspired by a project in Brooklyn where, like, the local official Latrice Walker, is Latrice's last name Walker? Is that right? Latrice Walker. I should know this because now we're like buddies on Twitter, and I'm going to go visit her hopefully in a few days. But yes. She brought out a bunch of community organizations to intervene in like a really high crime area in Brooklyn, and they had 0 911 calls for the period, except for one person who dialed it by mistake. So what Latrice is demonstrating is that we can invest in different ways in our communities that can help reduce crime, that can help make people safer, that don't involve police showing up every time. And Latrice actually showed me, had like the opposite story, and this is what inspired her to do what she did, where she said that she saw a young black man get shot in the same neighborhood because they thought he'd stolen something. And it just made me think, it's like, do you really need to send police officers for any time there's an issue that can elevate and accelerate that conflict as opposed to de-escalate it and diffuse it? So that's where my mind is as to how the city should be investing. I mean, we're facing an environment like your daughter said, DJ Envy. I mean, we're facing an environment where people of every background in New York City are concerned about rising crime. I mean, like that's the reality. So we need to tackle it using every tool at our disposal.
You know, they did shift $1 billion from the NYPD, you know, to other things. But would you do more than that? Would you do more than $1 billion?
I think that's what we need to be looking at. We need to figure out where the resources are in the city budget and what we can allocate to some of these programs like Latrice Walker's. And the reality is, if you're going to look at the city budget, the NYPD is the most likely place to look because we're just spending a lot of money on the NYPD. And I'll say one other thing about the money we're spending on the NYPD. It's not even just that $6 billion you're talking about, Charlemagne. We spend hundreds of millions of dollars in civil fines settling lawsuits against officers. Talk about the shittiest way to spend city money you can think of. It's like you're actually like spending money on lawsuits for cops that did something that, you know, injured someone or like abused someone's civil rights. That money could be going to people, to schools, to helping get some of these restaurants and bars open. So it's not even just the $6 billion that you see directly in the budget.
Now, you know, police unions aren't going to like this rhetoric coming from you. How can you win New York without the support of police and police unions?
But you saw that they backed on Bill de Blasio previously when he was speaking. So,
well, what I'd say, Angela, is that I was in the Bronx the other day and I talked to two cops who were there. And one cop was a black guy who actually recognized me and liked me. And so, you know, like that was nice, took a picture. And then his partner at the subway was a Latino woman. At least I think she was Latino. You know, like she was, she could have been Latino. and so like we had a convo. And I think that there are a lot of cops that are like that, where, you know, that they're like there to serve and protect. There's something wrong with the NYPD culture. But I think that culture does not extend all the way down to like every cop who's there trying to do their job every day. So we need to try and help cops that want to do their job in a way that makes us safer and more secure. But we need to address the abuses in the system. And I think most police officers would recognize that that's where most New Yorkers are, and that's where we need to go.
You know, me and you had this conversation offline. Like, how do we bring New York into the future? Like, I think New York should look like Dubai. With all the money that's spent here on tolls and tickets and all this other stuff, like, why doesn't it look more futuristic?
There are a number of reasons for that, but I'm with you. And to me, like, the surest path to the future is to start investing in people. I mean, there's some very, very fancy office buildings in New York already. So if that's your version of the future, like, we've got that. But the future we want to live in is not a future where people can't provide for themselves and their families, where you're concerned about going outside because you're afraid like a homeless person is going to accost your daughter, DJ Envy. I mean, like that's really where our focus should be, on the future of our people. And if we get our resources heading in the right directions, we can do it. I mean, this city, even though we are on our backs right now and this is a terrible time, this is still the wealthiest city in the wealthiest country in the history of the world. Like, we do have the resources to make good things happen. And I've got some ideas on how we can generate money too. Like, you guys should know I'm all about that. I've got, like, it's not all like, giving people $1 billion. I mean, like, we're gonna have to do some things. we're gonna have to make some tough choices. But I'm with you, Charlemagne. New York City has to be the city of the future. And there aren't that many people, in my view, that are actually living in the future that have been making a lot of our decisions for quite a while.
And I agree with Charlemagne. I just feel like a lot of times in New York we spend the money on the wrong things, like,
oh yeah,
like that mall in Jersey that's not doing well right now. I just feel like that mall should have been in New York City. The fact that people could come, they can ski, they can go swimming, they can do so many different things. A football team on the side of the West Side Highway, something to bring people there. The roads, like, New York is it just seems like it's a big, nasty, disgusting mess. Like, there's litter everywhere. There's, food on the floor. There's mice running around. When I walk here every day, I must see about 5 of the same mice that I say what's up to every morning. And that's crazy.
I know, living in Brooklyn, when it's garbage pickup night, like, and they put the garbage out the night before, I know it's like playing Frogger with all the rats running around. I'm nervous to walk down the street because there's so many rats everywhere.
But you don't see that with LA. You don't see that with Dubai. You don't see that with those places. So it's just weird that you say New York has so much money, and we don't see that.
Well, the money hasn't been flowing through the public sector in many ways. A lot of it's in the private sector. But I've got an idea that hopefully speaks to what you just said, DJ Envy, about how like that shopping center should have been in New York City. Right. So one way I think we can generate money and also make New York City more fun, New York City should have its own casino on Governor's Island. And who's going to use that casino? A lot of tourists. It's going to generate tons of money. It's going to be in an environment that right now is essentially unused. Like you can see that thing becoming like a major draw, generating hundreds of millions of dollars a year. One thing I think New York City needs to do is like we do need to continuously develop new reasons to visit. Yeah. You know what I mean? Like New York City has like a million reasons to visit at any moment in time, but it needs to continue evolving too. And so that's one of the things I think we can do in a way that'll actually help dig us out of this hole. And that casino would generate so much money. It'd be bananas. And if the city can get that in place and then harness some of that, like that can be one of the engines of recovery.
As far as the shopping mall, Hudson Yards on the west side, and I don't know how that's been doing during this pandemic or what that rent looks like, because, just even real estate here in New York City is hard to come by and super expensive.
Well, Angela, what's interesting is like if you look at a really high-end real estate development, in a way, retail for them is just like a quality of life thing for them to have their values be high. So they almost don't care about the rent that's being paid. If you go to other neighborhoods that are not high end, then they care a lot about that rent. And so what you're going to see is that the storefronts that are going to close are going to be more the ground level retail that we see around us every day, because those landlords actually really want that rent in a very significant way. And those are the landlords we need to get to come to the table and hammer out an agreement so that their tenant can reopen. It's going to be a painstaking, very, very individual process. That's one reason why I think I'll make a great mayor, is because I ran a small business in New York City. I want to get into the guts of that. Right. I want to have the landlord and the restaurant owner or bar owner or a store owner or whatever, like at the table and say, okay, what is the situation and how is it that we can get you to reopen? Because as a small business owners will never reopen if it's just going to put them in a deeper hole. You know what I mean? It's like, hey, I owe a bunch of money. My landlord's here breathing down my neck about the rent. And if I reopen, guess what? I'm going to make half as much money as I used to. And it's just going to make my hole deeper pass. That is the situation that a lot of restaurant and bar and small business owners are going to be in. So we have to get them to the table and say, okay, landlord, will you give them like a deep haircut until business gets back to this level and they can pay you? And your alternative is going to be total vacancy. So let's make this happen and essentially do this thousands of times over and over again and have some public funds that can help smooth the path. Like let's say the small business owner shows up and they're like, hey, I need $15,000 to reopen. The city should put that money up. And just be like, because I get it. Like if you're a small business owner, you're broke, you've been like hemorrhaging money for months. The city should be like, look, we'll help you with the restart up costs. Maybe we get paid back, maybe we don't. Like it's in our interest to get that business reopened over and over and over again. So the third or another component of my anti-poverty agenda, there should be a People's Bank of New York. Like right now, New York City has cash reserves about $2 billion, has operating capital at any moment in time about $5 billion. We should have our own bank and just put that money in that bank and then use that money during that period where it's in that account to help reopen small businesses, help reinvest in communities. So this to me is something that we should have done a long time ago. Like the city has massive financial heft that can be used to speed up our recovery. We should be working more with women and minority-owned businesses. Right now, it's less than 5%. You double that to 10%, that's going to be tens of millions flowing through minority-owned businesses here in New York City. You have to pay your bills on time. Right now, New York City drags its nonprofit partners around for months. They don't know when they're going to get paid. Like, what's going on with that? Right. I run a nonprofit. Like, you owe me money. You're the city of New York. Like, I should know that I'm going to get it within 30 days.
Right. I'm happy you're running for New York, Yang, but I can't help but think that I remember you said if you didn't get offered something worthwhile in the Biden administration, you would run for New York. So I'm going to assume you didn't get offered anything worthwhile or anything at all.
Oh, wow, you really straight to the point, Charlie. I mean, I appreciate it. I was in talks with the Biden administration. I have a lot of friends there. I think that's actually going to help me as mayor too, because I've got friends on Capitol Hill I can call and say, look, New York's been sending tens of billions of dollars more to the feds than it's been getting back, and we need to get some of that money back in our time of need. Investing in New York City will speed up the nation's recovery. So I've got a lot of friends on Capitol Hill. But the truth is, Charlemagne, I ended those conversations because I saw that my city needed me. Like, the conversations were ongoing, and then I said, look, like, sorry guys, I appreciate all the work that you put in to figuring out where I fit in the administration, but I've got another mission now. And so that's the way that situation got resolved. And I am pumped because this is where I'm meant to be. I'm ready to get to work. I'm ready to start solving some of the problems that you all are living and seeing every day. The people that are listening to this are living and seeing. I'm living and seeing it too. Like, we can all see it around us. And if we don't have the right leadership, the city we love may not come back the way we need it to. Like, that's just the truth. That's why I'm running. That's why I'm here.
What did Biden offer you? Was it a new position or something already there?
Yeah. I mean, we talked about a bunch of things. I was talking to them about something tech-facing and tech-related. I've got some friends who are heading to the administration to try and untangle. And so this goes back to your Capitol Hill question. A lot of the stuff that's driven the conspiracy theories and the QAnon phenomenon and the rest of it is social media. And so we all are on social media. Like, I see you all occasionally. I'm on social media. But we have to recognize that social media is dramatically increasing the level of energy that's going to some really, really nasty and racist stuff. And so I was talking to the administration about trying to help in that direction, because I think that's an existential threat moving forward. And unfortunately, most folks in Washington are kind of behind on technology. So I thought I could help on that level. Instead, I'm going to help New York City speed up on tech.
All right.
How much do endorsements matter, being that it is a crowded race? Have you gotten some endorsements? Because I see a lot of people who are politicians or have worked in government already have some high-powered ones. What about you?
I am so pumped to say, if you keep up with the campaign, I think we're going to be rolling out an endorsement a day for a while, Angela, because there are a lot of people excited about my campaign. I'm thrilled to be in the race. And so I'm not sure if I can give away some of the endorsements right now, but I'd ask anyone who has an interest, just go to yangfornewyork.com, yangforny.com, and we'll be rolling out an endorsement a day for a while. And I hope they keep coming because we all need to pull together and just fight for the city we love. To me, the day for politics is not today in a way. And I know, like, it's hard to say that because, like some New Yorkers love city politics. Like, this stuff's bigger than politics. I'm going to support whoever wins because it really needs to be all hands on deck and people working together.
I got one more question, and because it's social media related. How do you feel about Trump being banned from all these social media platforms? Is that a threat to free speech, or private companies can do what they want?
It's so interesting, man. I mean, it's similar to impeachment, where, like, if you incite a riot that takes multiple lives, then there needs to be action taken. And I don't know about the rest of you, but not having Trump on social media, it feels like a cloud is lifted or like a voice is gone. You know what I mean? It's like, part of me is like, oh, this could have happened months ago, and, like, everyone's mental health would have been better. So on that level, like, I'm for this move. I'm glad that it's indefinite. But to your bigger point, should we have a different process in terms of deciding who gets their account canceled and for what? Yes. And to say that the tech companies are going to get everything right, some of the tech companies are even raising their hands being like, hey guys, I'm not sure that you want us to decide all of this stuff. So maybe we should get together and figure out, like, a different way to decide these things. But our legislators in DC, instead of being like, oh yeah, we should come together and, like, develop a consortium that's with tech, government, media, nonprofits, some, like, watchdog groups, and, like, develop a consortium of standards. Instead, our politicians are just grandstanding, making some, like, 60-second speeches, and then everyone goes home and goes on with their lives. Like, our government needs to get much more in the weeds in terms of how these companies are making decisions. And some of the companies are even down. because they're looking at this being like, look, like, you know, of course we're going to have trouble drawing these lines.
Yeah, because I've been paying
You know
attention,
what
like even, I'm sorry, but to even on my Instagram, like I posted the video of the young man who kept getting called the N-word and he beat the white guy up. And I posted another video of Richard Barnett sitting in Nancy Pelosi's office with his feet on the desk. And it was saying he's from Arkansas, he's been arrested. Like that's literally all it was. And Instagram and Facebook flagged those and took those down.
Really?
Yeah. So I'm like, how is this inappropriate? How am I, it's not hate speech.
That's exactly the kind of line drawing issue you're going to run into. And right now we can tell the tech companies are going to be drawing the line very, very aggressively, or, you know, like assertively. I had something similar happen, guys, and it happened to me. And, you know, it's like in my case, I got excited for Reverend Warnock and John Ossoff winning in Georgia before like one of the races was officially called. And so like the post was like, this race is, so like that, those labels are popping up. We're going to see more of that stuff, not less, because at this point people have died and folks realize that there's a problem.
Right. All right. Well,
I have a question too. Charlamagne had given Donkey of the Day to Howard University. They named an Asian woman, Rin Yu, as the editor-in-chief of Howard Magazine. And obviously Howard is a historically Black college university, HBCU. So I want to know what your thoughts are on something like that.
Wow, I have not seen this story, Angela. Like, it's highly interesting. You know, to me, the folks themselves like have a sense of the individuals involved. You know, so if they chose this person, you have to assume that like they know something about either the person or the nature of the role or whatnot. So from the outside looking in, like, you know, it's a surprising decision, but you have to look at the actual role and who the people are, in my mind.
Well, Andrew Yang, we appreciate you for joining us, and good luck. And I'm sure you'll be keeping up with us and letting us know what's going on.
I'll be back anytime you all will have me. Let's fight for the city we love. Appreciate the heck out of each and every one of you. And yeah, like I'm thrilled to be announcing my run for mayor with the Breakfast Club.
All right.
Hey, use us, man. We're here to be used.
You
Yeah, I
guys are
didn't
the
realize
best.
I've been seeing it everywhere. Andrew Yang is running for mayor. So
Angela, next time we'll talk about our time at Donnell's in Ohio. We'll get that next time.
yeah, because you obviously are cool with Dave Chappelle. Dave Chappelle endorsed you when you were running for president, and he's a huge Andrew Yang fan. And so you've been out at Yellow Springs, and we actually had a party. I think I went to bed too early, but I saw pictures of you the next day. I was like, oh, Andrew Yang was over here. So what was that experience like for you being in Yellow Springs?
I gotta say that was like the most fun, because the Chappelle Oasis, or Camp Chappelle, you know, I have like T-shirts with Camp Chappelle. So I was in Donnell's house. He was cooking barbecue, and I was just like standing there in jeans and a hoodie, because you know I'd arrived. And then someone would look up and just be like, "Hey, yo, you're Andrew Yang." Like it was like, and it was like the most human experience I had had in months, maybe years. Like it made me feel like I was a college kid at a house party again. And it was just like so warm and loving. The food was great because Donnell can cook. Like the whole thing was lovely and beautiful, and I'm super indebted to Dave. And I'm happy to say there's a good chance that New York City is going to see Dave during this race. You know, we'll see if we can get him over to New York.
All right.
And I want to say it wasn't Donnell cooking. They had actually hired a chef. Shout out to Chef Gerald. He was not cooking.
When I was there, Donnell was 100% cooking. That guy can cook. Andrew Yang goes on the record and you know, confirms Donnell Rawling can do his thing in the kitchen.
I don't know if I can trust you now. All right. Well, thank you, Andrew Yang.
All right, Yang.
Andrew Yang, it's
Peace.
the Breakfast Club. Good morning.